Hey Drew, it's time for another office hours hangout. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So today we're going to be talking about ObjectRocket, their new MongoDB to Elasticsearch data connector, which I think is a really cool idea, really cool innovation that we've that those folks over there have put together for us. I don't know enough about it. I don't know about you, but I don't know enough about it. So we brought
We do
in
have expertise
we have experts that know about
that
this,
are
and we
available
brought
to us.
one of them in, and he is sitting right over there, which is actually over in our downtown Austin office. Hey Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. This is Keith Higbee. He is our one of the senior software managers at ObjectRocket, and he's been working on building this. He's got a great blog article about getting it all started, and we said, hey, let's go ahead and take this expertise and share it in this format. So we're going to be talking about our data connector and how we can kind of get that set up. So Keith, let's go ahead and just jump in and have you introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us about what you do here at Rackspace and kind of how you got here.
Sure. I've been at Rackspace for just about a year. Started last April and joined onto the team here when it was, still the bulk of the original founders, which was a lot of great synergy going on. Let's see, how did I get here? I've been developing since I was about 10 and hacking away, and took a break for 6 years while I was in the Marines. Got out, got right back into hacking, and started off on, when I started professionally, it was with enterprise medical systems, and just kept growing from there. So I had an opportunity to do development, architecture, and now I'm doing running the team, helping define the architecture, and when I still have a chance, getting into the code.
Yeah, we understand how that goes, but glad that you're here and working. I'm really excited to see this advance a little bit more. Well, good. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about this. So we were chatting a little bit before, but I think that it's good to give kind of an overview of ObjectRocket and kind of how we got to this point. So you mentioned the original founders of ObjectRocket started off as a hosted MongoDB service, right? So it was mostly a way to have this NoSQL database, but not have to host the infrastructure yourself and maintain it, which is something that we've found a lot of people liked. And then it expanded to different data sets. So tell us a little bit about some of the other additional engines that you all support.
Sure. Over the summer, we added Elasticsearch, which was a nice complement to Mongo. We've had the Redis to Go team has been attached at our hip for a while now, and we properly added them into the ObjectRocket platform. And as the year progresses, we hope to see our Hadoop offering, which is on Rackspace right now, as well as our MySQL, start to show up within the ObjectRocket brand and UI. And we foresee more data connectors going between those, so we can start to see interconnectivity against your whole data suite.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's what we want to see. We want to see different ways to reuse that data. Drew, you and I talked to our CTO John Ingates a while ago, and using the data you already have was one of his big themes. You want to give a little overview and paraphrase the boss?
Oh, well, I think you did a pretty good job right there. You've got a ton of data. Getting value out of it is where the businesses are headed. So getting value out of your data can mean a lot of different things in a data-driven decision-making world. Being able to get your hands on that data and quickly act is a pretty huge thing for time to market, and for those decisions to actually be implemented, and for companies to begin acting on the information that they're gathering. So getting value out of your data is really important. Being able to do so quickly just means that you can turn that into more monetary value or more strategic value more quickly. And so that's a huge deal. That's a big part of what we're attempting to enable for our customers. So John was talking a lot about his view of what that is going to be and what that's going to look like. But I don't see any way that sitting back and letting that data rot is going to be more valuable than taking advantage of it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So Elasticsearch was just added in this past summer. We don't even have a year in with it. We have a lot of experts that have been using it. We have a lot of projects that run on it internally, and we have external customers that have been using it. So, real quick, I think that our viewership is pretty familiar with MongoDB. But can you tell us a little bit about Elasticsearch and how that, some of the big use cases for it and how people might be using it?
Sure. One of the most common ones is, it's no longer the Elk stack; it's now the Elastic stack. But that whole thing the premise was ease of log ingestion and being able to see to visualize your logs and quickly grep it. That's still, one of the main use cases we see out in the wild. The other one is what was formerly faceted navigation is now filtered navigation. If you're running an e-commerce or a large content site, it allows you to quickly slice through the data and retrieve the result sets back much more quickly than you would off of any of the other data stores. And that's where John Engate's whole vision of using data multiple times that you've already got at rest. This plays into that hand. SQL Server, Mongo, all the other data stores, they're great for persistence, they're great for ACID, but they're not always really great for flexible searching. And fuzzy searching. Fuzzy kills just about every other database out there. We see all the use cases still, but yeah, logging and search primarily.
Yeah, that's great. Search is one of the primary ways that we're using it internally as we kind of reference some of our existing documentation and find ways to hey, I call it this, but what do you call it? So we can kind of find ways to match those up and find them. So, okay, so let's talk about the data connector itself, right? So we've been talking about our customers that have, they do have some type of Elasticsearch capability. They have some type of a Mongo capability. Before we built the data connector, what was the process for cross-referencing those data sets?
Sure. You would go the traditional ETL route. You would start to extract it, do the transforms you need to do the load. And where that usually breaks when you're trying to go from Mongo to Elastic is you're going from essentially schema-less data store over to a very strict schema within Elasticsearch. And you just hit collisions. And that's where, with the data connectors, we really tried to take a lot of the pain and suffering out of the situation by utilizing some of the best-in-class open source projects and libraries out there to, one, first analyze your Mongo schema, two, give you a recommendation on, based off of what we see in your schema, what we think the proper mapping is to get the most of your data into Elasticsearch without doing any data cleanup. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be 100%? Absolutely not, just based on the two data stores at hand. Does that kind of give you guys a rundown?
Yeah, I think it kind of sets the table pretty well. Can you talk a little bit about what that process would look like?
Sure.
In a timeline. So now that you're using our data connectors, how much does that compress a timeline, and what are those steps in that process?
Sure. If I was going to do it traditionally, it would be a trial and error. Constantly, set up the log stash, set up the beats or the river, whichever I decided to take off the table. Find somewhere to host it, get the data connections going, get the mappings in place, run it, go check the syslog within Elasticsearch, see where I went wrong, update my mappings, lather, rinse, repeat, probably a number of, many times. With the data connector, you simply go in, you select your source MongoDB, you select your target Elasticsearch, hit submit, and the next step is we run it through analysis.js. It's all happening asynchronously, so if you have a massive data set, we will let you know minutes to many minutes later that we've scanned your data set. And we'll give you a recommendation, and you click OK based off of what you see within our mapping. If you don't like what you see in the mapping, you check, uncheck, decide if you want to index it or just store it for view, and move on. On our average data set, because we're defaulting right now to the first 1,000 rows, or the most recent 1,000 rows, mm-hmm. The schema analysis is taking under 30 seconds. So you figure within a minute you can have your mapping complete. Within several minutes you can have your first bulk load from Mongo into Elasticsearch. And hopefully within the hour you're in Kibana starting to utilize and visualize your data. and then deciding, do you need to go in and do some data cleanup? Do you need to change the shape of your data to now you're really seeing what it looks like? So yeah, it significantly reduces the time, I think, to get these ETLs put in place.
So could you also give us a picture of what that cleanup might look like? So you're in Kibana, you're looking around, you're getting an idea for what the results have been, and now you're going to take additional steps forward. What does that cleanup process typically look like?
Sure. Yeah, not muted. Sure. One of the big ones we see is the date fields when you're trying to go from really any data store into Elasticsearch. It's really easy to skew those. Is it an ISO date? Is it a string date? It just depends on what data source you had at that time. So when you run the analysis, it'll give you an idea of how many different types it sees. So if it sees 10,000 of a date stamp field, and of that, 6,000 are string, 3,000 are ISO date, and another 1,000 are some other object, you're able to very quickly see within that analysis what your shape is. Choose whether or not to continue forward and just say, okay, we'll take the ones that fit string, or we'll take the ones that fit date. Or you go ahead and stop. The analysis is done. You go back into Mongo. You run some data transformation scripts to clean the source data. You come back into your data connector, rerun the analysis, and at that point in time, you'll see, one, the fruits of your labor. You've now cleaned up the shape of your data. And then you can continue on with the straight mapping. Unfortunately, we don't have a magic tool yet to go back and clean up Mongo. But I'm sure if we put our heads to it and we get enough traction on this, we'll spend some time on it.
Well,
This really,
go on.
this looks like one of those. I mean, the data connector tool is one of those things that you see customer paying. Hey, we're trying to do this translation, and Elasticsearch just isn't playing nicely. Its structure is more than what we can easily handle. So we're going through this, iterative process that's just a pain in the neck. And then here comes data connectors that solves that problem. Well, it doesn't solve all the problems. There's certainly more, but it's a proof behind, we find customer need, we apply expertise, and then derive value. And maybe in the not too terribly distant future, there's a nice data cleanup tool for Mongo that gets plugged in with additional best practices and that expertise. But just the fact that we have this data connectors tool is proof that well-applied expertise can go a long way towards delivering real value real quickly. And then once that's in the hands of customers, we get to see the outcomes. So with that in mind, what kinds of customer outcomes have you been seeing? Where has this already been leveraged for some customer value? I mean, whitewash the names if necessary, but let's talk about results and kind of what value customers are walking away with.
Sure. Yeah, I'll leave the customer names out. We got a couple of our original big ones who are really who are putting it through the steps right now and breaking it as fast as they can.
Good.
Yeah, and they're, I'm talking, they are the 500-pound gorilla compared to the rest of our customers. So our average customer will be just fine. The big ones are scaling, and it hurts us. And we're fixing it hour by hour as we see how they're knocking it down. How's it helping them? When you start to move large amounts of data, there's a lot of resources you have to put in place. There's a lot of network you have to keep an eye on. And it's just a lot of moving parts to constantly monitor, supervise, and just set up. They're not having to do any of that. It's thought-free to them. They can come in, they can turn it on, pump the data into Elasticsearch as fast as possible. If they don't like it, if they don't like how the index was, or if they don't like the tokenizations that they used at the index time, it's really simple for them. They just go ahead, drop that index, go right back to the connector, restart it, and it does a complete hydration and lets them move forward, all with the click of a button. So it's it's really streamlining how they handle it right now, even though we haven't put the transformations in place yet, and that's coming here very shortly.
Yeah, I think that's the big benefit, is not having to worry about setting up all of those, that schema mapping over and over and over again. Hey, it didn't quite work out. Let's start from scratch. Let's do everything. I mean, you said what, 30 seconds or so to run the analyzer. So I mean, you're only out a couple of seconds to do that. So yeah, being able to kind of streamline that. Time to market's another thing that we've been talking about quite a lot on this show this year, and just shaving off a couple of minutes, a couple of probably even a couple of days actually in some of these larger transformations. I mean, being able to shave off that time allows you to get on with your business. Why were you wanting to incorporate Elasticsearch anyway, right? I mean, let's get on to that point and get our customers to that point so they can be successful with their plans.
Well, ease of use can be a barrier to entry. I mean, there's a lot of data that you don't know is there until you start digging. And if you know the amount of work that has to be done before you can start digging is prodigious enough, we'll get to it later. But when you can sit right down very quickly and have access to all that data and just start picking through it and seeing what turns up, it's a much more compelling offer to say, yeah, let's just throw that into Elasticsearch and let's get going, instead of, yeah, that's a project for another quarter. We'll get to that when we have time. Lower priority. Once you drop that barrier to entry low enough, it becomes compelling and valuable to go and see what's in that data now instead of put that off. And who knows what benefits can come from a little bit of research and the time to market, like we're mentioning. It kind of has two sides. You can have a specific goal you're trying to hit, or you can have a specific barrier you need to clear, and it can affect both of those, being able to act so much more quickly with so much less resource allocation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you can quickly augment your Mongo with an Elasticsearch within an hour and visualize it within Kibana, it's beautiful for doing proof of concepts. It's beautiful for handing off to your product and your product owner, your product lead, who doesn't want to ever drop to a command line, doesn't want to play with the, Salt Stack or OpenStack or any of these others. They just want to play with the data and get an idea of what's out there.
With all the additional tools that are available now, you can really put massive computational power and thought power into the hands of people who wouldn't naturally be able to grab that, or would have to wait around a long time and order up reports not really knowing specifically what's there. If you're able to give them, here are all the fields that you could potentially search against, or here's all of the data that we have, look and see if something sparks your interest. That can really spark some curiosity that wouldn't have otherwise been there, and that can really turn into major business gains, because something that we didn't know was possible is now suddenly possible when the opportunities and the potential was set down in front of, like you mentioned, a project person, a product person, somebody in marketing, or somebody CIO somewhere. Oh, really? That's our operational situation? I didn't know we had that kind of overhead, or I didn't know we were running such tight margins, or I didn't know, whatever the case may be. We can act now before it becomes a problem, or before the problem continues to get out of hand. And that can be a huge differentiator when competition is tight, or when you're really rushing to be that first to market with a new feature, new product, or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to take just a real quick minute here to mention that this is the Rackspace Office Hours Hangout. We are live right now, recording this live from our headquarters in San Antonio, Texas, the castle we call it. And we are sitting here talking virtually with Keith Higbee, who is a senior product manager, or senior software development manager at ObjectRocket. And he's telling us a little bit about the new Elasticsearch and Mongo connector that they've built, and that our customers are getting some very good use out of. So if you're watching along live, we'd love to hear from you. You can drop us a question via Twitter. Use the hashtag CloudQA. If you are on YouTube or Google Plus or something like that, drop a comment, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you. But yeah, let's jump back into it. We've been talking a little bit about how fast you can get into understanding your data a little bit better. I mean, Drew, we're mentioning the time to market again, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Keith, what are some of the other benefits that our customers have found from being able to reuse the same set of data via the connector?
Yeah, so far it's been just a lot of data exploration. Like you guys were hinting to earlier, taking a look at the facts and dimensions in a way you haven't seen before, and with an agility that we haven't previously seen. if you think about how your business analysts would cut through the data, they would traditionally grab an OLAP cube. How long does it take to put an OLAP data cube together? I've never seen one or a data warehouse get together anything less than 6 months. So to go from 6 months and have usable cross-slicing within an hour, it just slays the previous paradigm that was there. You don't have to have tons of procurement. You don't have to get the hardware put in place. You go flip a switch, you stand up an Elasticsearch, put the data in, you start cutting. And that's what we've seen so far. It's only been out for a week and a half now. So who's using it in production? Nobody yet. But who's playing with it? Plenty. So we're keeping an eye on to see what they're doing, and that's what it is so far. A lot of grepping the data and seeing what's there.
Yeah. The idea of not having to worry about the hardware, not having to worry about updating the data source itself, the data store itself, right? That's absolutely what ObjectRocket is built on. It's ObjectRocket is going to take care of all of the hardware and all of those considerations, and you just go to work with the data that you have. And being able to bring in another data store or another way of looking at that data with Elasticsearch, I mean, that putting those two together really just extends the power of Mongo even further, or excuse me, of ObjectRocket even further. So we're really glad to see that. Can't wait to see people get into production. I know it's still early access. Can we even ask about a timeline yet for people going full force into production on this?
I'm hoping sometime next month. So if it's not March, definitely by April. And it's a lean offering right now, and we've got a lot on the backlog to really start to buff it out, make it a long-term, fully on committed feature to our product. And Mongo to Elastic is just the first of the connectors we have on deck. So yeah, by April we hopefully should be in production, and people should be able to lean on it heavily.
And what would it look like for somebody who wants to start kicking the tires in the early access? How does someone get started with that?
Sure. Just jump out onto ObjectRocket. Make sure you've got stand up a MongoDB, stand up an Elasticsearch, and go to the connectors tab and follow the very simple instructions and just walk through it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at your blog post here. Tyler, can you share the blog post on the screen? It's really simple. You walk people right through it, and this is just a great example of how to get started with it. I mean, it's just a very simple matter of dropping in a couple of data points on the form there, and then all of a sudden you get that result spit back, and it says let's do this mapping, and you can choose whether or not to go with it. I mean, it's that easy. So that looks really nice. Yeah, it's super easy to follow. So I really like that option there. Let's talk a little bit about the Kibana aspect of it. So that will actually allow you to create some visualizations around it, if I understand correctly.
Yes, correct. That's really where Elasticsearch in my mind comes to the forefront. Mm-hmm. It gives you that pluggable ecosystem there. So if you want to start to extend it and put your own visualization widgets into it, you totally can. So you can get your D3 and your JS gurus in there to customize it just the way you want, or you can use it right out of the box, and it's incredibly powerful. Honestly, I've been playing with Kibana now for I guess about 3 years since it was Kibana 1, and like every time it just keeps getting a little better and a little better. And there's really, if you understand the shape of your data after you've taken some time to look at it and search it and get a feel for it, there's really nothing there that you can't start to slice and dice and either put into a chart or into a graphic that'll really pop and allow your business users or even just the product users to have an idea of what's there. And it's beautiful. It's pretty nice. I can't say enough good about Kibana.
We have a few dashboards around the office that run off of it, and they make great visualizations, and they convey what they need to, and they're obviously pretty easy to set up.
data that's not clearly communicated doesn't really do much for anybody. And so to be able to clearly represent what you're trying to represent can go a long way towards convincing the right people, towards inciting the right action, and moving forward on a project. And so to be able to clearly represent something that would have otherwise been difficult to articulate or clarify can be a huge deal for the business types. And without clarity, how do you move forward with anything? So definitely a solid tool. I was in the middle of another thought when I started talking, and I lost it completely. But we'll come back to it.
We'll find it again. You mentioned a couple of times the ability to switch, or if you understand the shape of your data. Do you ever see this going in that opposite direction, where you might not understand all of the facets that your data can actually incorporate? Have you seen, or do you think that it's out there to say, hey, now that I have this other method of analyzing my data, slicing up my data, and now literally viewing it with Kibana, do you see people having a better understanding of their data and being able to use, transform it into different ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ease of use and the ease of access, especially with this quick onboarding, it allows you to very quickly see what you're missing when you try to put a dashboard together. And I think of one of the really beautiful things of Elasticsearch plus Kibana is you see it right there on the screen when you're trying to put that graph together. You quickly see, oh, okay, I'm missing data point X, Y, and Z. I can't put the rest of this chart together. Let me quickly get with the team, make sure they're getting this into the clickstream or the IoT feeds, and get that data point brought into me so we can start to surface it. And the fact that you can go in and update your widget as soon as that data is available, and depending on the turnaround time on your team, it could be available near real time. It's just that much more of it just tightens the feedback loop that much more than I think we're used to within an informational side of the data house,
And it's something that helps you shape that data in a more useful way. And so understanding the shape allows you to then mold it into the shape that's most useful. And a team that's tightly integrated and can act on those things can provide value much more quickly. It's incredibly valuable. And it requires more than just tooling. It requires a team that can function in that mindset. And so if we can take the tooling off the table and here you've got everything you need, you don't have to go build it, then you can focus on just having a team structured and capable of acting on it, and having fewer things to focus on building and maturing is a hugely valuable thing as well. So those same people, when tasked with more value-added projects, help the whole company move forward.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that. As a manager side, I used to run data science teams, and one of the last things I ever wanted my data scientists to do was to touch the server, touch the actual data pipeline. I wanted them working the data, doing the guided, the supervised learning. So, like in my mind, this is the perfect fit for them. They get all the data, they get all the power, they don't have to touch the pipeline, and we make sure they're sticking to what they're best at.
That's great. So this reminds me of a show that we did a couple of months ago with Robert Chapa, who did something similar with New Relic, which is a kind of a proprietary thing. I like this as an alternative to this stack as an alternative to sending your data to New Relic or to even using the built-in Rackspace analytics that we have that are available. I mean, I think that this allows you to be more fine-grained with what you're collecting, what you are monitoring, and it's a great way for customers, especially if they have some type of a compliance concern or something like that, to control
Security
all of
and data
that.
ownership,
Especially now that MongoDB, or excuse me, that ObjectRocket has completely dedicated instances of Mongo as well. So, great way to keep all that private and secure.
Well, I finally came back around to the thing that I was thinking about earlier.
Good,
and you mentioned that we've got some very sizable customers that are currently in the early access, breaking stuff and testing at the limits. And I think a lot of times customers forget how valuable it is to be working with a partner who has a breadth and depth of customers that are doing such varied workloads on the same set of tools, because that's going to help us really flesh something out. So the reason that we don't have this as widely available right now is the value that we're deriving from people throwing their weight around, breaking stuff, testing things, pushing the edges of envelopes, so that we can offer a more matured, more tested, more battle-hardened offer to the market. And when you're building something on your own, if you're making a tool set for a specific use case within your organization, you don't have the benefit of all of the other people who are trying to do similar things, and what they stumble upon, the problems and the values that they track down as they're going about the same process you are. But when you work with a partner like ObjectRocket, who does have that benefit of having that wide variety of different users doing a wide variety of things at various scales, you're able to get that value of all of those lessons learned that just get piled in and funneled into that final product. And so I think it's often hidden from customers' view how much value that can be. But with most of the products that we offer, especially the as-a-service products that aren't just raw infrastructure, you really start seeing massive value in those products because we have such a variety of people using them. And beyond that, we have such a wide variety of experts who are dealing with those issues as they come up and learning things that otherwise that education and that expertise wouldn't be available to your organization as quickly or as in such a depth as it is when you're working with a company that's able to really focus around products like this. So I think those are values that we're watching being brought to bear right now in early access, but really in a lot of our features, it's all coming from customers doing unique things and pushing unique corners of our offerings. And so while you may not be doing that today, we very likely have a customer doing that thing that you will be doing tomorrow today. And so we're learning that lesson now, making those changes, streamlining our approach, and that's going to be a benefit to your business. And you may push a corner of the envelope that hasn't been pushed yet, and we'll learn from that and be able to apply it to all of our other customers. But you're not always pushing every new corner of the envelope. Someone else is going to take that on, and we're going to learn from it and apply that in. And so that's one of the things that I really like about these early stages of offerings is the pace of learning that we get to experience as a company. Can you talk a little bit about what our teams do in taking those lessons learned in and applying them, and how we're able to get a really robust offer out in that turnaround time? I mean, you said we're hoping for April, but to have something we launched last week that we're hoping to have widely available in April is a pretty decent pace. Talk about what kinds of things y'all are doing to tighten it up.
Sure. To start off with, we gave it a full dedicated worker tier. It's completely brand new. It's a new architecture. It's based off of Mesas, Apache Mesas and Marathon. So it's a proven platform. And how do we keep up the speed across the board for making sure we can have our velocity and get these products out the door quickly? We take the best-in-class open source pieces that are out there. We take a very senior, experienced group of developers and engineers, and we grab the use case. Our large customers call us. We say we need a way to move terabytes of data between Mongo and Elastic. We want to do it efficiently. We want to set it and forget it and never look at it again. So it's really not that difficult. There's only so many tools in the community that allow you to, one, even attempt to do it, unless you're going to try and roll your own, which we're trying to avoid that. We'd rather augment and expand upon what's out there. So we take these good tools, we take these very skilled people, we stick them in the room, we whiteboard it, we throw it back and forth, we compare it to what the customer's asking us, we throw the prototype together. We hook it between the two data sets and we start to run with it. Every first run's probably going to pop and it's going to throw a bunch of syslogs. You jump in, you grep it, you see where we broke. We quickly go back, jigger it, tweak it, and push it back out there. And we keep doing that, lather, rinse, repeat. And it's not over a course of months. It's days and hours because we've set up our SDLC is set up to handle it, our deployment pipeline is set up to handle it, and we're building the infrastructure behind the scenes to allow us to quickly and easily deploy out these little components without having to do a complete regression across all the systems. So it's a loosely coupled, eventually consistent system across the board. So at any one point we can have a failure, but it quickly bounces back. So to the customer's aspect, especially when it comes to data connectors, an outage of 10 seconds is probably negligible. But it gives us that resiliency. If we need to switch out a worker or one of the actual data pumps, we can very quickly go update the Go code, pop it back out there, run it in parallel. Actually, we can do a parallel fork on their feed, and we can do a comparison. Are we still looking good? Is it still traveling? Did we get an increase in performance? Yes, yes, yes. Boom. Let's go for it. Let's make sure the customer's good. Inform them we're about to roll it out, and then get their feedback on it. And our early access customers have been really good about participating with us, and they're some of the more technical users. So it's not the users that actually are looking for the guided handheld. They're really good engineers as well. So it's a very collaborative effort. So by the time we get the average product on top of us, they've got all the fruits of that advancement we've done. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I mean, we as a company, we're pretty integrated with the open source community, and so as much value as a community of customers can lend to a new product. You mentioned that it's all built off the best in breed open source technologies. Those themselves are built off of large communities of people trying to do all sorts of things, and so we build our tools with the tools that are already proven in the community that have that backing and that lesson learned library already available to them. And then we compile them in a way that seems to make the most sense. And as our customers and that community of users hits that product, we're able to take their feedback and what we're seeing and bake that again on top of on an early access product until we get to a point where we're very comfortable offering it as a full-on full access production environment. And so I think that really speaks to kind of the culture that's been built here around open source communities and building that critical mass of customers that are helping to be that community for these products as we launch them. That was a great answer. Thank you for clarifying kind of what that product process looks like.
No problem.
Yeah, we know that you guys, you all work very hard out there and are really good at, finding what the customers are, what they need and iterating quickly and making sure that the product that you're putting out is great. You mentioned a couple of other, that you hope to make some other connectors going forward. If we can, what would you like to see? Do you have anything that you can? I'm not asking for a preview, but if you had to choose which ones were coming, which ones do you think would be most beneficial to our customers?
Yeah, without committing to a backlog or anything like that, I would like to see an MQTT, like a Mosquito, so we can start to get IoT feeds coming in. So we have the ingress, the ingestion of the data. And I would also like to at least see us get on the next iterations, Elasticsearch into Hadoop. We found through some testing that one of the quickest ways to get your data into Hadoop is just to link it right into Elasticsearch and let that be the feed. So I envision seeing our clickstream data and our IoT data going either directly into Mongo, then to Elastic, or directly into Elastic, and then using it then to jump off into Hadoop. Elastic would give you that near real time. Here's the heartbeat of my product,
right.
And Hadoop gives you the long-term batching process. So in my dream of dreams, that's where we would go within the next few months to be determined.
Well, that's great because that's it encompasses so much more than right now you do like that heartbeat that you said right now. But you can with Hadoop you can look at historical trends. You can look at so much. It is that big data set that you can look at all the different components to it. So being able to look at that entire life cycle is going to be nice. I also heard you mention Internet of Things, and or is that you said IoT, correct? I want to make sure that it's going to be interesting. I think getting the physical world into the digital data world as well. Do we see a lot of our customers starting to bring on information from the physical world?
Not yet, but we have a number of large-scale customers who are clickstream centric, which is essentially the same data flow, or at least the same shape. Maybe a little more verbose when it's coming off of a site and you're getting some of the demographics info, but it's all along the same lines. So hopefully we start to see the IoT, and that's one of the things I'd definitely like to link up with our guys in the Intel office and see what we can do over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, look like you had a question.
Oh, no, you covered it.
I did? All right, cool. That's always a good sign when we hit them together. All right, well, we've also come to that point in the show where Drew and I have tried to ask the same question at the same time, and that's usually a good sign that we are just about out of great questions to ask. So let's to kind of start to sum it all up again. Keith, thank you for joining us here. I think this is a great dive into looking at this data connector between Elasticsearch and MongoDB. I'm personally interested to see what other customers are going to start doing with it. I really look forward to checking this out as it goes along, and as you mentioned, bringing in more and more, eventually being able to connect all of those data sets together. So really interested in that. Keith, do we miss anything? Do we miss anything that we really would like to chat about here today before we go?
I just had two quick ones. One, we're trying to capture the Parse market now that Parse is closing down. We're trying to get them on the platform, and connectors actually plays into this nicely. If you're using the open source API that's available on GitHub, you don't have the dashboarding anymore. And so if there's a Parse customer over there that's wanting to migrate onto us, definitely reach out to us, because I'd like to use you as an early access or a beta customer to see. Can you use the data connector into Kibana to make a replacement for your Parse dashboard that you're now going to be missing? And then secondly, we're hiring. So if this sounds like a fun project, if you want to move quickly and play with some of the latest tools and go against a wide variety of real-world use cases, great company, and I can't think of a better place that you can have more fun, more advantage, and grow and learn more than you could here. So please, please, please reach out to any of the Rackspace teams and come on board.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put up a couple of links to those. I have recommended several people to join up here at Rackspace and ObjectRocket, your guys' office in Austin, downtown Austin, in the Frost
Building. The view's not bad.
It's nice.
It's a really nice view. It's kind of makes us in the basement of this mall kind of a little bit jealous, but
we don't have to sit in the basement.
We don't have to sit in the basement. That's true. We can go up and sit on the balcony out there. But no, it's a great place to work, and I completely echo that. So if you really enjoyed the couple of minutes where Keith was talking about the actual technical way that we've implemented this, then give him a call. Hit him up on Twitter. His handle's right there. Hit him up at ObjectRocket. Check us out, and we'll get you. Get you
pointed in the right direction.
So that's great. And then you mentioned Parse. Yeah, that's another thing that I noticed as well as that kind of left a lot of people trying to figure out what they were going to do with their data sets and how are they going to continue to run their data. So being able to jump into Parse or from Parse directly into different sets is great. Having that connector available. So yeah, if you're out there and you're trying to figure out what to do with Parse, here's a great idea. Go talk to ObjectRocket as well. So, and if you're that unicorn that is looking for a job and a replacement for Parse, well, boy, do we have
we got a deal for you.
We want to talk to you. So, all right. Well, hey, on that note, we'll go ahead and start to wrap it up again. So thank you again, Keith. Really appreciate it. We do this show every week. This is our 135th episode, I want to say. Tyler's nodding. 135 episodes. So we do this every week. We're going to do it again next week. And
that's every week.
Yeah, it is. That is. We're actually going to be talking to one of our security partners, Duo Security, that does multi-factor authentication, and they've actually implemented some stuff for us, for our customers, and for to interface with Rackspace, and then they've also worked with a lot of our customers to continually secure their environments. So that'll be a really interesting show. I think there's a lot of people that can learn a lot about. I think two-factor is one of those things where you can just, the moment you turn it on, you have a massive security
Huge upgrade.
Yeah, huge upgrade. So definitely something to check out.
Make
So,
good decisions on the web.
Yes.
Your homework is to go set up multi-factor auth anywhere you can.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we'll see you all next week. Thanks again, Keith. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and take it easy. Bye-bye.